In March Madness, the final Illini season is now over as they lose to the Kentucky Wildcats in a round of 32, 84-75. In NBA basketball, the Chicago Bulls showed up LeBron James and Los Angeles Lakers, and Martellus Martellus had the move of the year. We'll discuss. We'll have a special guest previewing the 2025 Chicago White Sox in the rest of Major League Baseball. And we'll have a double play for Old School TV Monday. That and a whole lot more. It's the Monday extravaganza starts right now. Welcome to this Monday extravaganza edition of Second City Sports. You're locked and loaded, and we're live in the living color right here on Sports Soul Chicago, along with Miss LaKeena McGee, which is she. I ain't City Better. You better know by now that this is me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at CDK80. Once again, it's CDK80. That's SIDKID.
You follow LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, X, and IG.
Be sure to download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. Please subscribe to our podcast. We're located at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We're on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, please give War Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We're unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinion during our 2-hour extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio show, you can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions and comments in the comment section of the kingdom and get the up on the screen for you. But you decide to troll and or do something silly, dumb, or stupid, I've given LaKeena full powers to give you dumbos to bill and be a boot.
Toodles.
But before we begin, shout out to the replay game that's catching us on the replay right now on our Sports Zone Chicago YouTube page and our Sports Zone Chicago Facebook pages. And shout out to the live game that's checking us live in the living color right now as LaKeena has an important phone call, maybe with somebody in the sports world. We're not sure. Maybe for the White Sox front office. I'm not sure. But regardless, shout out to the live game that's checking us right now on our Facebook and YouTube pages. You know our motto, whether we talk sports, music, entertainment, and more, minus politics, we will always provide.
Remind you with some of the best here on Second City Sports, of course, our buddy Herb Lawrence.
I think that's Rice calling you.
Yeah, maybe that is Rice calling us for our buddy Herb Lawrence.
You want free tickets for opening day?
Well, yeah, I'll make sure to give you the hookup set of the.
Oh, I got mine.
Well, sure. I mean, Herb Lawrence, our buddy from the Addison the Sox to 35th podcast, will join us to preview the White Sox and the rest of the AL Central and other baseball happenings, and maybe some other stuff too. We'll talk about that.
Illini therapy too.
Yeah, maybe we'll say maybe so too. Yeah, well, he's a good person to do that. So we'll have that, and plus, of course, we have a double dose of Old School TV Monday, and of course, we'll do a little bit of the women's tournament. The Bulls win again. Sorry, our buddy Mac Peck. But and the rest of the weekend in the NBA and so much more between. But first, let's go to the men's first. As unfortunately, Illinois. Well, look, I said this back in January that this was a team that could perhaps maybe get to the Final Four or lose in the second round. Well, they ended up losing the second round to Kentucky yesterday, and I mean, I don't think anybody should be surprised by this. I know a lot of Illini fans. I know our buddy Herb is an Illini grad, but I'm sure even he probably did not, wasn't too shocked by this, by what happened last night. They were just outclassed by a Kentucky squad in the Midwest region, 84-75. Kobe Brea from Kentucky, who's all SEC. They couldn't really stop him. He had 25 points, for for the Wildcat, 23 points, I should say, for the Wildcats. Otega Owe had 15 points. Butler had 14 in a losing effort there. Kylan Boswell had 23 points, one of his best games in a while. And uh, Thomas Slavovicic had 19 points for him as well, 13 points for Yakachonis. But it was, look, it was one of those things where you lived and died by the three. They were 9 for 32 from 3-point range, so you're not going to win a lot of games that way. And Kentucky, they're going back to the Sweet 16 for the first time in like 3 years. So, nice job for Mark Pope and that and the Wildcat gang there. But so from the online perspective, what, were you surprised by what transpired yesterday?
No, I wasn't as disappointed as a fan, sure, but to be honest with you, I was not surprised at what happened. You mentioned we talked about it all year long. This was a good Illini team, but a very young Illini team. On some nights, they can show you they're top 16, top 8 team in the country like they were a year ago. And at times they can show you that they don't belong on the same court with some of these other blue blood teams in the country. Yesterday, they got out to a slow start. They slowly fought their way back into the game by playing defense and being aggressive. I told you that was one of the keys I was looking forward to on Friday. They did that against the team. Excuse me for the moment. Xavier, thank you. They
Uh-huh.
did it against Xavier, but that consistency got lost yesterday against a better team in Kentucky. Now, the Illini, as I mentioned, they got back in the game with their defense. They started to figure things out offensively in that second half, but the way they started that second half, it was atrocious. No defense whatsoever, no effort on that end. And the Kentucky Wildcats killed them inside the paint all day long. It boggled my mind, to be honest with you. But Brad Underwood, we talk about him in his coaching decisions, and rightfully so. But there's some other coaches that has worse problems than him. We'll talk about that later on down in this hour. But the Illini, where do they go for him here? They're gonna have to use the transfer portal again. You may lose one or two guys to the NBA. I think one of them should not go into the NBA, but we'll discuss that. But as far as yesterday's effort was concerned, they did try to figure out late offensively, but it was too little, too late. They shot themselves in the foot with too many turnovers, and they got outclassed defensively, especially in the paint.
Yeah, it was back and forth for a little bit, but like you said, Sid, I mean, the paint, kind of killed Illinois. 32 points for Illinois, only 32 points, and 40 for Kentucky. So they really dominated in the paint there, and I kind of feel like this is sort of the game kind of went with as I thought. Illini would hang in there for a little bit. I know Kentucky, we've seen them sometimes be a little, a little like lax, in some form, but. But look, I mean, they got their big three. They kind of did their thing. Brea, Butler, in a way. Amari Williams kicked in with 8 points and had eight, had 8 defensive rebounds too, which was a huge, especially against Yakachonis and Ivisic. But it was definitely one of those things where you just like Kentucky just made the bigger shots late, and Illini didn't have any answer for them.
Yeah, and check out these statistics from yesterday as I was trying to explain myself. 14 turnovers for the Illini, 5 for Kentucky. Points off those turnovers, 26 points for Kentucky off of 14 Illini turnovers. That was the difference in the game, in my opinion. You mentioned points in the paint. The Illini had 32, some that came in garbage time, but Kentucky had 40. Those offensive rebounds, even though the Illini were +3 in the offensive rebounding department, Kentucky got those loose balls and those offensive rebounds when they needed it most. The Illini couldn't do a damn thing about it, which was sad.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Listen, Second City Sports on Chicago, LaKeena McGee, Sidney Brown, with you talking a little March Madness. As we go into the second week, it's down to the Sweet 16, folks. We'll talk about the rest of the second round games after this break. But Montez Johnson, you thought that maybe would make a little bit of a difference from Illinois. Only 5 points off the bench there. Trey White only had 8 points. Will Riley, who was was actually a big part of what the Illini did in those last few games, in the regular season, only had 5 points. He was shut from the field, was 0 for 3 from 3-point range. So that really kind of like killed whatever Illinois' chances there. You gotta give Evs his credit. I mean, he made a couple of big threes in the first half to keep the Illini in it, but like I said, Kentucky, they just outclassed him, and outplayed him. And look, I mean, I know who you're talking about, but yeah, there are a couple of guys, Illinois. I mean, Brian Underwood, I know he said he wants to win a championship and blah blah blah, but you gotta do that with the transfer portal because it actually starts today with 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 the transfer portal and stuff, guys moving around. So Brad Underwood's gonna have to take real advantage of that if they want to, be right there. Because not only do you have to worry about, down the line. I know Iowa just hired a new coach. So did Indiana. Michigan,
So did
Michigan
Texas
State.
too.
Yeah, and Michigan State. That's going to be up there as they're going to be up there as well. Washington, I know they've struggled this year, but they're up and coming. UCLA, USC, they're up and coming too. Oregon, they played a great game last night against a former Big Ten / former Pac-10 / Pac-12 foe. We'll get to that after the break, but they're right there. So yeah, Illinois, they've spent money on facilities, but at the same time though, you just gotta, it'll be interesting to see what Brad or what does, during recruiting in the transfer portal we got because with NILs and everything. So yeah, it's basically a free for all now.
Of course, they lost Terrence Shannon Jr. last year to the NBA. Now with the Minnesota Timberwolves doing very well this year, they may lose Kaspars Yakachonis. I know he's a very good talent, LaKeena, but I'm not a scout. Of course, there are better people way better than both of us think that he's NBA ready right now. But if the NBA thinks he's ready to take that next step and chase that money, so be it. I'm not mad at him for that as far as business is concerned. I know we talked about him as being a facilitator for this Illini team who can score. He did show some signs yesterday, but he was one of those players that kept having those silly ass turnovers to start the game, and that's something I didn't like at all. When your team is dependent on you, you need to step up, and I didn't think he stepped up enough in my liking yesterday. You talk about Will Riley, who I think was a go-to guy on this team. He struggled too. His performance yesterday was the opposite of what he did in that second half on Friday against Xavier. But Yakachonis, in my opinion, is he NBA ready yet? No. I think he needs another year. But someone asked him yesterday, could it have been his last game in that Illini uniform? He said he doesn't know. So we'll see what happens with that. But you mentioned about Brad Underwood with the transfer portal. He's done a credible job of replenishing talent in Illinois. When was the last time we said this, LaKeena? Maybe Bruce Weber to a lesser extent 20 years ago this year when they reached the Final Four because he replaced Bill Self, who left for the bag in Kansas the year before. So it's been a long time since Illinois has recruited such talent like this. Now that college basketball too, just like the NBA is a global game, you have to go outside the Chicago area to get some talent. Brad Underwood has done a good job, but they need to get better talent in there. A couple of Chicago guys, area guys, wouldn't hurt either. So, but like you said, we'll see what happens down the road with that.
And we'll talk more about that and other second round games for March Madness. Well, we'll even talk to our buddy Herb Lawrence because I know he's in the Illini. We know you guys know he's in the Illini grad, so we'll offer him we'll some therapy, like you said earlier, a little bit at the top of the hour. But first, we'll keep it round ball as we talk about the rest of the tournament. Kind of chalky for the most part. I mean, there were upsets if you want to call them that. In the men's college game over the weekend. Also, too, we'll do some NBA time permitting as the Bulls keep winning. Where's a hat? You wish I had a hat like everybody Matt Peck.
I'll throw this at him. I don't know if you saw that, but
yeah, I gotcha. So yeah, we'll talk about that in the rest of the weekend in the NBA and a whole lot more. LaKeena McGee sitting around Second Seed Sports. That's Sports of Chicago. More around ball talk coming up right after this.
Oh, phooey.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class.
These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver. And I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to Second City Sports on this Monday Extravaganza edition. You're live to load in real live and live in color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's LaKeena. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, executors McGee on IG.
As we continue our March Madness discussion, and we'll get into some Bulls in the NBA later on. You could have any questions or comments about those subjects. You could definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get them up on the screen for you.
Let's stay with the men's tournament as we'll talk about yesterday's games in the West region. There will be no three-peat for UConn as they lose to Florida 77-75, and they actually ended the Florida. Like I said, Florida, they go back to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2017, and this is actually UConn. It was back and forth in the first half. It was tied at the half. And then, of course, it was back and forth. UConn was up for a little bit. Then Florida came back, and you thought that maybe, pulling away there. But it was the, Florida's depth, I think, wore UConn out. Walker Clayton Jr. had 23 points, including 5 from the three-point range, including a couple of big threes that helped solidify Florida's lead against UConn. Will Richard had 15 points. Elijah Martin had 18 points on the losing side for UConn, 22 points from Leo McNeely, and Alex Caraban, who was one of the few holdovers from those last couple championships, had 14 points for UConn on the losing effort there. But if you saw Coach Danny Hurry's comments afterward, you could tell he was not very happy that his team will be able to three-peat, but nice win for Florida as they march on to the Sweet 16 out west.
Yes, I told you, I think I had Florida winning this tournament. I liked Florida because they're well balancing. Not only they could shoot it from the outside, they could definitely score it on the inside too. And they're a very good underrated defensive team. UConn, as you mentioned, they didn't have the depth like they that have had over the previous 2 years. But they gave Florida a battle, and Florida was definitely up against the wall. But they made a couple big plays down the stretch. Yeah, maybe you can have some questionable calls here and there, but for the most part, Florida earned it and deserved it, and they were battle tested yesterday. I think this will set them up for even bigger success next weekend as we get into the rounds of 16 and 8.
Yes, we will now. Going back to the East, going to the East region, I should say. Duke, for the most part, no trouble with Baylor, 89-66, and it was basically all Duke. Like about halfway through the first half, they didn't really. They got a big lead and didn't look back. Tyrese Proctor had 25 points. Cooper Flack had 18. A nice, well balanced scoring there for Duke and a losing effort there. Jeremy Roach had 7 points. Of course, he's a transfer from Duke. Now playing for Baylor. Robert Wright the third had 11 points. VJ Edgecombe had 16 points to lose effort for Baylor, but they just didn't have an answer for Duke in their 3-point shooting and for Cooper Flag, even though despite the balance scoring from Baylor.
Yeah, you mentioned about Tyrese Proctor. He becomes the first Duke player since his head coach John Shire in 2010 to have back-to-back tournament games with 5 or more three-pointers made in back-to-back games. And I told you about him on our show last week. And I thought that Cooper Flag shouldn't have played in that first game on Friday, but as you mentioned, he looked pretty good yesterday. He looked pretty good on Friday. So it looks like that ankle will be holding up well as Duke will advance to the round of 16. But it's been Duke's depth, as we talked about in the last couple weeks on this show, since Cooper Flag injured his ankle in the ACC tournament. Their depth is, I hope the nation took notice that their depth is much better than what people give it credit for. So Duke now with these some of these teams that we thought they were going to make at least the Elite Eight, some of them are now going. We'll go through the results here in a second. But Duke, in my opinion, is the number one favorite to win the title. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy path for them, but they're becoming the number one favorite now.
Well, one team that could give them fits, staying in the East region. And shout out to our Blaze Deals from CBS that had the call of these next two games we're going to be talking about. First, Alabama and St. Mary's, 80-66 there as Alabama advanced to the Sweet 16 for the third straight year under Nate Oates. Chris Youngblood had 13 points there. Mark Sears had 12, and so did Grant Nelson. St. Mary's. Well, look, I like the St. Mary's squad, but like I said, the three, they depend on a little too much for my taste. They were 3 for 14 from 3-point range, and when they're not hitting their threes, they're like, you might as well forget it. Mitchell Sexton had 15 points there, the West Coast Conference Player of the Year, but it was just too much Alabama.
I like Mark Spears, who leads that charge at the point guard position for Alabama. That's a team that can get up and down the floor and they can score with the best of them. But you need guys like Clifford Amaruri that can bang inside. He had 10 points and 11 rebounds yesterday. As you mentioned, St. Mary's is a one-dimension team. Just like the Illini, if they're not shooting their three-pointers well, they get exposed. And that's what happened yesterday as Alabama showed that they're one of the top teams in the country that can possibly, you mentioned, give Duke a run for their money for the title overall.
Staying in Cleveland, this time the South region, Michigan State got all they can handle from Rich Pitino and his New Mexico Lobos, but they turned it on in the second half. They're beating them 71-63, and it was Mr. Jaden Atkins, 16 points for him, and 14 points off the bench for Trey Holloman, one of the probably the most dangerous six men in the country there. And in a losing effort, Nelly Jr. Joseph has 16, Matsafa Maziel and Donovan each have 14 points. But once Michigan State tightened things up in the second half, it was they were I wouldn't say they were on cruise control, but they took over control of that game in the second half.
Yeah, whatever Tom Izzo, their head coach, said in that locker room, it worked in that second half. New Mexico, as you mentioned, scored 31 points in that first half, only 32 in that second half. In Michigan State, this is one of the reasons why people always pick Tom Izzo's team, because they know what to do. They are prepared for these moments. In the second half yesterday, they executed their plays, both offensively and defensively, to perfection. And they just have the better players. And don't forget my guy, Jace Richardson. I remember his dad playing. We're not that old, folks. So, so Michigan State has the depth, and that's why they're moving on to the round of 16.
Remember, Jason Richardson was part of that 2000 championship when Mateen Cleaves and Mo Pete the Flintstones, as they called
Mm-hmm.
those guys way back in the
Mm-hmm.
day. Good Lord, yeah, we are old, Sid. But anyway, staying in the South region, and if you want to call us an upset, I guess for your seeding, I guess you could. Ole Miss beats Iowa State, and I don't think anybody saw this score coming. If you know a little bit about Ole Miss, we talked about them a little bit because they kind of got lost in the shuffle with with your Tennessee's, Alabama, Auburn, Kentucky's, or what have you. But Chris Beard has his squad playing very well. Sean Padula had 20 points, leading the way there. Malik Dia had 18 and 19 on the bench for Jamin Brakefield. Now, unfortunately for Iowa State, they couldn't get it going with their Joshua Jefferson had 13 points in a losing effort.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Curtis Jones had 26 points off the bench, but it wasn't enough because give Ole Miss credit for basically taming a very high scoring Iowa State squad.
Yeah, that first half, the way that Iowa State came out offensively, that's what did it for them, only scoring 29 points in that opening half. Ole Miss were leading as much as 22. I know Iowa State made a run at it, but it was just too little too late. Iowa State, according to many people, they were a silent favorite to perhaps get to the Final Four. That's all for not now. But you mentioned Ole Miss. They're not Alabama, they're not Auburn, but they're very good inside with the interior, both offensively and defensively. So, and that's where it was on display yesterday.
I believe this first time since I think like the early aughts that Mississippi Ole Miss has gone to the Sweet 16. So Chris Beard has done a great job building that program up. Now, one of the better games of the week, and we got our first buzzer beater. Derek Queen had 17 points for Maryland, including a buzzer beater jumper as they held off a very talented Colorado State squad. Nick Clifford, who we talked about on our show on our Selection Sunday show last Sunday, had 21 points. But yeah, Maryland. They're back to Sweet 16 for the first time since 14, and yeah, they've been look. They were able to they were able to hold off the test for a very pesky Ram squad.
Yeah, let's give some love to Julian Reese as well for Maryland, 50 points and 11 rebounds. As I said on the last few shows, LaKeena, everybody talked about Michigan State being the favorite, and rightfully so. But I said Wisconsin and Maryland. We'll get to Wisconsin coming up, but I said one of the reasons why I said Maryland was a surprising team because they're athletic too. They're definitely athletic in the inside. Derek Queen, nice shot by the freshman off the glass to banking it. That kid was fearless yesterday, and he lived up to the moment, and that's why Maryland's moving on to the Sweet 16. Maryland has some athletes, folks, and don't be surprised that they can get to the Elite Eight. They're a very good athletic team, as I mentioned, on the inside, but they can definitely hit it from the wing too. So Maryland, I know some folks are surprised. I'm not surprised they're moving on to the Sweet 16.
No, if you've seen Maryland, yeah, I know they be inconsistent at times, but when they're on, they're on. And look, Derek Queen didn't have his best game, but he came through late, which is what you want your best player to do. So good for Maryland there. Now Arizona feels like it's been forever since they've been this Sweet 16, but they held off former Pac-10/Pac-12 foe Oregon 87-83, and you give Oregon credit for look, they were up by, I think it made by like 10 points, and they kept coming back, but they just couldn't break through. Caleb Love had 29 points, and 9 boards, I should say, for Arizona. And a losing effort for Oregon. Jackson Shellstead had 25 points there for them. And look, Arizona helped. Look, they forced Oregon to play their style, and they were able to hold them off.
Yeah, we know that Oregon is a very good offensive team, but as you mentioned, Arizona, they like to get up and down at times, but they're a very good sneaky defensive team. We saw that side of that from them yesterday. Oregon, as you mentioned, they did try hard, but they just didn't have enough. So, we mentioned with the Wildcats, and they, let's be honest here, with them being in the Big 12 now, they got lost in the shuffle too at times during the season. So, with them going into the round of 16, I think we'll see more of them. Don't be surprised if they get to the Elite Eight.
Well, Caleb Love, knows all about the team they're going to be playing next, and that is Duke. Of course, he was in North Carolina for about 3 years before transferring, so he knows Duke very well. So that should be an interesting game coming up on Thursday. Now, going to Saturday's games real quick. In the South region, Auburn held off Creighton 82-70. Todd Pettifer had 23 points there. Houston held off Gonzaga in the Midwest. This is the Midwest region, folks. 81-76. LJ Cryer had 30 points for the Cougs. Probably one of the bigger upsets, I guess, if you want to call it, because I actually had St. John's going to the Final Four in one of my brackets from the West region, from this region. But Arkansas said not so fast. 75-66. Billy Richmond III had 16 points for Arkansas. And you got to give, look, I know some of us don't want to give Coach Cal credit, but give him credit. He lost one of his leading scorers, in about a month left in the season. But look, a lot of their guys stepped up. Like I said, Richmond III, he had 16 off the bench. Janelle Davis had 32 points. Carter Knox had 15 points as well. But also, too, unfortunately for St. John's, their guys didn't step up for the moment. Kadari Richmond only had 5 points. RJ Luis Jr. only had 9 points. Over 3 from 3.
And benched 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah,
and benched the last 5 minutes of the game. I thought that was shocking. But that's Coach Pitino for you.
Well, look, that's how he does. And unfortunately, that did not help his cause. So, now St. John's, everyone was good. Everyone had, some people had them as kind of the turning point to get out of that reach, perhaps even winning it all. But Arkansas said, no, not so fast.
Yeah, I had St. John's at the Elite Eight losing to Florida, but that's not going to happen now. But you mentioned give Calipari credit. St. John's had a great comeback, but you mentioned some of the guys too. They were shooting early, and some of the guys were in foul trouble as well. So when you spend all that time and that energy and coming back, especially from a double-digit deficit like that, sometimes you run out of gas and your offensive game suffers, and that's what happened to St. John's. And not only the fact that R.J. Luis was benched for 5 minutes, but you just start to run out of gas. Arkansas barely held on to win. So, like I said, congratulations to the Razorbacks. Congratulations to Ronnie Brewer, the assistant coach, one-time Chicago Bull. Saw him on the bench there. Congratulations to that coaching staff. So, Arkansas, they learned that this is March Madness, and sometimes you're going to have go through experiences in games like this. So, Coach Calipari is I'm not going to say the perfect coach, but he's a good coach to guide these young guys through this. So, hopefully they learn their lesson. They're going to have a tough game next game coming up on Thursday. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. So, Arkansas, they were battle tested. They barely passed it, but it survived and advances this time of year, right? It's not about style points, it's whether you won or lost.
Staying in the SEC now, but it was time in the Midwest region. Tennessee held off UCLA 67-58. Chaz Amir had 20 points there. Texas Tech, pulled away from Drake 77-64. Darian Williams had 28 points for the Red Raiders as they go back to the Sweet 16. BYU edged out Wisconsin. 91-89. Richie Saunders had 25 points. Despite 37 points for John Tonji, unfortunately for Wisconsin, they just couldn't get the 3-point shot going. And, you can say there were a couple of calls that did not go Wisconsin's way, but they should have never been in that situation to begin with.
Yeah, and that part of that was their fault. The other part was their fault was they really didn't tighten up defensively, as I thought, because they're one of the best defensive teams in the Big Ten. We know that BYU likes to get up and down and score, as you mentioned. Mr. Richie Saunders for BYU led the team with 25 points, but Wisconsin broke down defensively, especially in the late stages of the game as well. So that's another reason why they're sitting at home today.
Finishing up here, Purdue. I don't think anybody had them going far, but they'll look. Manise, to their credit, valiant effort. But look, 22 points from Trey Kaufman-Renn as the Boilers beat McNeese 76-62. Michigan, I should say, and Texas A&M. Michigan, probably another surprise team from the tournament so far. 91-79. They're going to the Sweet 16, and this is a team that only won 8 games last year. Now they're going to the Sweet 16. Hey, look, sometimes a coaching change could help.
Yeah, and also too, Vladdy Golden has been a beast, as the kids would say, from the inside for the Michigan Wolverines. And he's been doing the job all year. He did it again yesterday with a 20-piece and 12 rebounds. So in Michigan, I told you I like Donaldson, their point guard. He had a couple of big shots in their first game. Last Thursday night. in an opening round game. I know he didn't do too much yesterday, but I like the way he contributes as well, setting that pace for the Wolverines offense. So Michigan could be another sneaky pick now since Wisconsin's out. You still in the Big Ten. Just thinking offhand, you have Michigan State, Michigan, and now Maryland. So the Big Ten, we all know that all of them weren't going to advance, but you still got the best teams, in my opinion, in the Big Ten remaining in this tournament.
Real quick, the schedule for Thursday and Friday. It'll be the East and the West on Thursday. BYU and Alabama. The East region games will be on CBS. That'll be the first game up there in Newark, New Jersey. In the Bay Area and San Francisco, these games will be on TBS and True TV. Maryland and Florida. Then after that BYU Bama game, it will be Arizona and Duke. That should be a good one there on CBS. And Arkansas and Texas Tech on TBS and True TV. Two completely different styles. So we'll see who comes out on top there. And then it'll be the South and the Midwest regions. The South region will be on CBS as Ole Miss faces Michigan State. That should be a good one there at 6:09. All SEC first matchup in the Midwest region. You got Kentucky and Tennessee, TBS on and True TV. Then it will be Michigan and Auburn on CBS at 8:39 in Atlanta. The Kentucky Tennessee game was down in Indy, and of course after that the nightcap will be Purdue and Houston on TBS and True TV from Lucas Oil Stadium. That should be a good one there, and that's just scheduled for the round of 16 matchups.
All right, you're listening to Second City Sports Zone, Sports Zone Chicago City. LaKeena here with you. LaKeena, since our next show will be on Friday, I just want to get your thoughts and predictions on Thursday's games. We'll start off with BYU versus Alabama. Almost two contrasting styles, but not quite. Both these teams like to get up and down the floor. We all know that BYU, the Cougars, are a scoring machine. Alabama, I really like them as a surprising favorite. I'm taking Alabama in this one for entertainment purposes. Only Alabama's favored by 5.5.
If they could slow it down and kind of like force BYU to force shots, and also to remember they're playing all the way in New Jersey, and also they're going to be for the first game up, so their body clocks might be off. So if Alabama could take advantage of that, perhaps maybe put away BYU early. Just I think the key is don't let BYU hang around, because if you do, you hit them shot for shot, and they may think they have a shot. So to fit the key if you're Alabama is to finish them off early.
At 6:39, as you mentioned on TBS on Thursday, Florida versus Maryland in the West region. Florida, for entertainment purposes only, they are favored by 6.5. I said Maryland is one of my sneaky favorites, that they're going to go up against a tough Florida team. As I said, Florida is a well-balanced team. I know Auburn's the number one overall seed in this tournament, but Florida is not too far behind. I really like Willie Clayton Jr., and they're a very balanced team in terms of shooting the three-point shot and really getting up and down the floor. Maryland brings that toughness, as I mentioned, but if Florida's hitting their shots, especially from three, it's going to be a long night for the Terrapins.
Yeah, they're battle tested. So we saw, like I said, with that game against UConn yesterday. So yeah, I could definitely see Florida. If Maryland doesn't tighten up, perhaps maybe, look, they could, like I said, Florida can go a good 10-12 deep. So if you're Florida, you might want to try and use that to your advantage. So it'll be interesting to see what Maryland does. So we'll just see what happens. But I'm picking Florida. I think they'll be too much for Florida. Florida will be too much for Maryland to handle.
Arizona and Duke to cap off the late games. This one will be on CBS. Duke is favored by 8.5, as we mentioned. Cooper Flag, no problem with his sore ankle through the first two games of the tournament. They're going to have to be very battle tested. They're going to go up against a very tough Arizona Wildcat squad, led by Caleb Love.
Yeah, like I said earlier, Caleb Love knows him well, of course, since he, faced him a lot when he was in North Carolina. So you'll be interested. Like they did. So I'm kind of looking forward to see how they do it. They did face each other earlier this year. Duke beat them by 14, but this is a totally different Arizona squad. So again, if you're Duke, you want to try to kind of like send a message early. Get Proctor and Flag and the rest of that group, going there, and Love's doing a good job, but other guys got to step up for Arizona if they want to have a shot.
And Arkansas and Texas Tech. Texas Tech is favored by 5.5. Buzz Williams has done a great job with that program, but Call me crazy looking. Trust me, from a personal, excuse me, from a personal standpoint, I am not rooting for this, but I think Arkansas has a slight chance, not a big chance, but a slight chance at an upset. But I'm going with Texas Tech here.
Yeah, Grant McCaskill's done a great job with that Texas Tech squad, and look, you wonder that all that lack of depth for Arkansas, you wonder if that could come back to bite them, especially against a Texas Tech squad that likes to kind of like force you kind of like slow things down and such. So we're gonna see what happens. But yeah, I think Texas Tech could win this as well. But and plus, we're just see what the crowd's gonna be like there. So yeah, that should be an interesting one over there in San Francisco.
All right. Stay tuned for more sports and more fun as the Monday extravaganza edition of Second City Sports continues with Mr. Friend of the show, Herb Lawrence from the Addison to 35th podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network. And we'll have a double play of Old School TV Monday. You're listening to Sports Soul Chicago.
No, I don't know though. I'm scared. I mean, you're so
Do you know that you're in my lane? No, not at all. Are you not paying attention? Are you texting? I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6. It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention. I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom Brady, the director of DODEA. September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. The simple act of reaching out and caring for those in our communities is something we all can do. Just being there for someone you care about can be a tremendous first step in getting them access to confidential resources and support that they need. It only takes one person and one small act and 1 minute to make a difference. Let's make a difference.
Move it!
Many will hear the calling. Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back to our number 2 of the Monday extravaganza on Second City Sports. You're locked and loaded and real live in the 11 color right here on Sports Soul Chicago. Along with my co-host, Miss LaKeena McGee, which is she, the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80, that's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, X and Q's McGee, and the IG. Of course, you can follow.
Okay. As we kick off
We're doing this
Go ahead,
live,
LaKeena.
folks.
Go ahead, LaKeena.
No, you can.
Okay.
No, you can. Of course, you can comment, and if you have questions for our terrific next guest, you can comment on the Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube channels. It's all right there for you. Keep it clean, folks. So we're gonna be talking some White Sox baseball, one of our favorites. Sid, introduce him, please.
Yes, he's formerly of 670 The Score in CHGO Chicago. Now that he's with the Just Baseball Podcast Network, he's the co-host of the new Addison to 35th Baseball Podcast with co-host Ryan Herrera. He's one of our favorites. He's one of your favorites too. Please help us welcome to the show, Mr. Herb Lawrence. Herb, welcome back, my friend. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I hope my internet is good right now because I'm on location right now. So I making sure that I'm good to go.
Yeah, good so far. Good so far.
Yeah,
Okay.
so far so good. All
All
right,
right, Herb.
No, you go ahead, Sid.
All right. Herb, we all know about what happened last year, the worst record in Major League Baseball history. I'm going to try to put that in the trash can as much as possible, but we may see some lingerings here and there in 2025. Chris Getz has been preaching starting over with a new philosophy, new culture. And let's be honest here, he's definitely, give him credit. I know some folks don't want to give him credit for anything thus far, but he's really changed the face of the scouting department in that front office. Talk to us about what more should we expect from him in 2025.
I really like what he's done with the front office. I, of course, didn't like that he got the job that he got because I don't think he was qualified. I still don't think he's qualified for getting the head baseball head baseball decision maker for the Chicago White Sox. Whatever I had to say about Rick Hahn in the past, he was qualified to do the job. I just didn't think he did a good job. Now, since Chris Getz has taken over the job, yes, they've had a poor record and they've been bad on the field, but the hirings of Brian Bannister as the head of pitching for the White Sox, even though they're running to a lot of injuries right now, getting Josh Barfield from the Arizona Diamondbacks was a good coup last year. This offseason, Ryan Fuller, the hitting director they got from Baltimore Orioles, has been showing dividends to recently released Brandon Drury. His swing had improved until he got his thumb hurt, and the White Sox released him. They also got Walker McKinven to come in from the Milwaukee Brewers. He was the pitching coordinator and the working with catchers up there in Milwaukee. If you guys remember, Omar Narvaez as a White Sox, he was a really poor receiver. He couldn't really do the job. Decent enough hitter, and then they traded him away to Seattle. Eventually, he made his way to Milwaukee and became a plus catcher because of Walker McKinven's tutelage. Now he is the bench coach for the Chicago White Sox. So I think he's done a good job in getting the pieces in the front office right. The one thing I pride myself on is self-awareness and knowing what I can't do and what I can do. And that seems like the same thing with Chris Getz, understanding that this job is way too big for him. And so he needs smarter people in the room to help him out and to modernize this franchise that's been stuck in the 90s for centuries.
Now let's talk about on the field for a bit here, Herb, because we've heard Luis Roberts Jr.'s comments in spring training say, hey, he wants to be, he wants to be better, and he, I don't know, who knows if he'll be traded by the trade deadline. So, guys also, like Andrew Vaughn, and do you see any of those guys moving by the trade deadline? I know we're a little ahead of it because the season hasn't started yet, but do you see them perhaps maybe moving those guys at some point?
I would see him moving Luis Robert Jr. I'm surprised that he didn't move him in the offseason. There's a lot of teams available out there to get traded to. I thought the Cincinnati Reds, with Tito Francona being the new manager out there, would make a splash or try to make a splash with getting a big-time player like Luis Robert. That's the way they're going to have to get players out there in Cincinnati, since they're not going to spend the big bucks. Getting Luis Robert for $15 million in is what could be his last year on his contract, and then he has 2 team-controlled years under $20 million each the next couple of years. That would be a great way for the Cincinnati Reds to get a superstar without having to pay superstar prices. Same thing with Pittsburgh. And I think still Dave Dombrowski out there in Philadelphia might need a center fielder. I think they're playing Brandon Marsh out there right now. It's fine, but I don't think he's a center fielder necessarily. You move Brandon Marsh back out to left field and get Luis Robert, that team would be moving in the right directions there, because you got a sieve out there in right field and Nicholas Castellanos that can't catch a damn thing. But Luis Robert's used to that, as the White Sox have never had a real right fielder in a long time, especially since Luis Robert has been at the White Sox on the major league club. So I think he'll be traded before the trade deadline. Now, as far as Andrew Vaughn, he has no value. Like, he's a first baseman that doesn't have power, first baseman that can't field, first baseman that can't run, first baseman that doesn't hit for average. Like, he doesn't do anything well. This is his 5th year in the majors coming up. And so I think also his last year as a Chicago White Sox, no matter what, if he does become the guy that they wanted him to be, yeah, I think eventually they will move him, and probably maybe not until after the season's over. And they'll move him, either they'll not DFA him, they'll just non-tender him for the 6th year, or move him for something small. But as a first baseman with none of the skills that first basemen usually have, there's no value there for Andrew Vaughn.
Yeah, you just answered my question about Andrew Vaughn, but we'll move on to catcher. Of course, Corey Lee is going to be your starting catcher for now. Although he showed some signs last year, especially at the plate. He's a very good defensive catcher. He could be a serviceable catcher in today's MLB, which is not bad. That's his career catcher. But we are waiting for the debut of Kyle Teal. He has a great personality in that clubhouse. He's been impressing his teammates in spring training. I know he's going to start the year in Charlotte, but what are your observations about both these players? So you can start off with Kyle Teal. Where do you think he's going to make his debut up here up north?
I think it's going to be short order for him. They're going to probably play him a couple months down there in Charlotte. And as you know, Charlotte itself, the ballpark, is a bandbox. And as a left-handed hitter, it's even more advantageous. And I think that he will show that he's past the AAA level. He's not a 4A player. He's just ready for the majors. And the White Sox happen to have a youngish catcher in Corey Lee at the major league level. And that's had a good spring training. So he saw the writing on the wall. He saw the Edgar Carroll coming up, doing well at AAA last year for the White Sox. And now they're trading in the offseason and getting Kyle Teal. So Corey Lee got the job done in spring training and held off the young players for now. But I think Corey Lee will be Corey Lee when the season starts, which means decent defender, great pop time to second base, but he won't hit a lick. And so if you're a guy like that, you're destined to be a backup catcher, which is fine. I think that is his destination in the major leagues. He'll probably be a 10 to 12 year backup catcher for this league. But with Edgar Carroll coming, young player, I think he's 21, 22 years old, and the aforementioned Kyle Teal, who I don't know if they're going to keep him at catcher because of the having Edgar Carroll there also. He's the more versatile of the two. So he can play the outfield, which he did for the Red Sox minor leagues last year. He could probably play some first base, play some designated hitter, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if he'll be the everyday catcher, but once one of these catchers, either Carroll or Teal, come up, I want them relegated to the starting spot, not the backup to Corey Lee, because that's nothing there. That's not anything for your future. And so those guys have to play the majority game. And if they're not playing the majority of the games, keep them down in AAA. There's no reason to bring them up here just so they can sit on the bench in Chicago.
How surprised were you when Sean Burke got the starting now for opening day? I know Sid was lobbying for Jonathan Cannon. I was as well. I know you were too. So what was your reaction when that news came out? Excuse me.
It was surprising because most people didn't really have him in the starting rotation to start spring training. Like, he was a candidate. He was one of the guys who was in the mix. But going into spring, and then in the middle of spring, you're thinking, Davis Martin pitched well last year. You just got a veteran in Martin Perez. And then Jonathan Cannon pitched decently last year. You're thinking one of those three guys is going to be your opening day starter. And then you're going to have somebody on the back end, whether it be Shane Smith, who is the fifth starter or the projected fifth starter, or Bryce Wilson to fill out the rotation. But no, Sean Burke did have a good end of his major league season last year, showed promise. He has great stuff. Got hurt a couple years ago, and so he went off the White Sox radar for a little bit and fans' radar for a little bit, but came back last year with a vengeance. So, and what they're seeing in him this year for spring training must have impressed them so much that they say, hey, you're the opening guy. We want you to be the guy. And, you know, his difference between himself and Davis Martin and Jonathan Cannon, probably negligible. But, you know, I think, you know, just trying to give a type of a meritocracy type of a situation in spring training. So if you go out to spring training and you perform, we're going to give you the reward that you deserve. And so he pitched well in spring training. They're giving him the reward of being the opening day starter, which is, no great things to sneeze at. I remember last year I was mad that they gave it to Garrett Crochet, who had never started a major league game. And look how that turned out.
We hang out with our guy, Herb Lawrence, from the Addison to 35th podcast, co-host, part of the Just Baseball Talk Podcast Network. He's hanging out here with us right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago City. LaKeena here with you on the Monday extravaganza of the program, previewing the 2025 Chicago White Sox. Herb, let's go to that Chicago White Sox bullpen. I don't want to overreact. I did that a few weeks ago on this program, but Mike Clevenger, he's like the house guest that someone older in your family keeps inviting, but everybody else in the family doesn't want him around. Just get out, please go home. I'll leave my emotions at the door. But just tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear, but tell me what you expect from Mike Clevenger. How many saves do you think he's going to have this year, assuming he gets traded by the trade deadline?
I don't think he's going to get traded. This is why I'm puzzled why they picked him up again. The teams in the major leagues had a chance to trade for Mike Clevenger in the 2023 season after he had a pretty decent year up to that point. They didn't. Then the White Sox put him on waivers. No one claimed him in 2023. So he went on to free agency in that offseason. No one picked him up. The White Sox signed him again. So a whole pack innings. That was it. 16 innings as a starter. Hurt for the most of the year. Has the offseason in 2024. Again, no major league team signs him to a major league contract at all. And the White Sox are like, yeah, that's the guy we want. That's the guy we're making our closer on this team because we're going to try to trade him to one of the other 29 teams who could have had him, who could have did the same thing you're doing, White Sox. If they wanted him, they could have had him for a minor league contract. But the White Sox are just trying to make this Mike Clevenger thing happen, and it's not happening. I think he will struggle in this role. As many people have said, pitching and starting and being a reliever are different things than being the closer of a team. Those outs 25, 26, and 27 are a different animal. Theoretically, they shouldn't be. They're the same outs that could happen in the 23rd out and the 24th out. But the stress and the pressure that you put on yourself makes it that much of a different thing. And so I don't think Mike Clevenger has the mental wherewithal and the arsenal of pitching to get batters out. And we've seen the last 2 years as a White Sox, he's been hurt. So if you're not available, I don't think you're going to be good. And other teams have already shown you they want nothing to do with you. So he'll be on the team. And I think he'll be on the team until the end of the year because he'll pitch poorly and because no other teams will want him. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope that he pitches lights out and he's off this team by July. And somebody's like, that is our problem now. Because I get tired of having to be mad at this pitcher each time he comes in the game. And now it's going to be more frequent because he's going to be the closer, even though the White Sox won't be having many closing situations in this year.
Let's talk about the injuries. It seems like every time you turn around, there's always someone's hurt. Talkman's hurt, Rojas is hurt, and now Drew Thorpe is out for the year, having to have Tommy John surgery. What the heck's going on with these injuries for the White Sox? As if they didn't have it hard enough.
Yeah, I think it's not even the curse of Herm Schneider, but since Herm Schneider has retired years ago, I think 10 plus years ago, the White Sox have been often injured, whether it was Brian Ball as the head trainer or the guy they have now. It just seems like whatever regimen they're doing, especially for their pitchers, which Shy Sox Mike pointed out, that the White Sox as a organization are having 6 pitchers have Tommy John this month since the start of spring training. And so that is unheard of, especially for the White Sox. Because under Herm Schneider, they barely had any. They were like the other side of every other team having Tommy John surgeries. So I don't know what they're doing as far as what Ethan Katz and Brian Bannister are doing introducing new pitches to these players, but they're young players who mostly young pitchers are going to have, for the majority, are going to have Tommy John at one point in their career. And so it's good for the White Sox in a way because they get this out in a year that they're rebuilding. They didn't need to count on Drew Thorpe this year. They need to count on Eater this year, et cetera, et cetera. But they still would love to have them, and they're going to lose a year of development for these players. But, yeah, it sucks for those people. Mike Tauchman, he's a right fielder for the White Sox. You become an outfielder for the White Sox, you instantly pull a hamstring. 100%. And his other guy, I mean, we got Austin Slater back, but he had oblique problems. Like, these are natural White Sox injuries right here. So I think it's not just these players that are getting are oft injured. I think what the White Sox training and staff are doing are either leading to these injuries and or exacerbating the injuries once they have them. Because if you see the last couple of years, when players do have injuries, they play through them until they don't get better. Andrew Benintendi said he had a hand problem the whole 2023 season. Sucked. He said the whole 2024 season he was trying to adjust. Instead of, hey, I'm injured, let me get 100%. And so when I come back, I have no excuses. But the White Sox did that with Luis Robert a couple of years ago, where he can only swing one-handed for like weeks on end instead of putting him on the IL. Their system of how to rehab and get players better is just flawed. And I think it's not only the player's fault, but it's also the organization's fault.
We hang out on with our guy, Herb Lawrence from the Edison to 35th podcast right here on Second City Sports on Chicago. Other young guys, that's at least one of them are eager to see this year is shortstop Colson Montgomery. When do you think he's going to make his debut? Will it be in the month of May or June or perhaps July? And what do you think about Lennon Sosa at second base? I think this is the last stint for him in the White Sox uniform. Talk to us about those two young players.
I think Colson Montgomery wasn't ready for the major leagues. I know a lot of people were anticipating him making the opening day roster, but when we looked last year at AAA, he struggled for a majority of that season, started hitting well at the end of September and started hitting the ball with some authority. Went to the Arizona Fall League and did the same thing. And then he played in the spring training, was all right, and then he got hurt, had back problems. So these things will put you back down, and the White Sox were smart and wise not to bring him up from the major league to make the opening day roster, because that's just ceremonial. You want this player to be on the roster and stay on the roster. So I think he'll spend a couple months down there in Charlotte and prove to them that he is past the AAA level. He is what he did in September is what he's going to do in April and May down there in Charlotte and crush the ball like he did back then, and then make it undeniable that he belongs in the major leagues. As far as Lennon Sosa, he has no more options left as a White Sox. So he has to be a player. He's 25 years old. We've seen him for parts of the last 3 seasons. Some spectacular, some pretty much bad. And baseball IQ is on 0 for him sometimes. He's a typical 4A player. Goes down to AAA, crushes. Comes up to the majors, it's like, what is this? I can't play baseball anymore. So, yeah, this is the time where he has to prove that both he can field at second base and he can hit for power in the major leagues. If he doesn't do that, I can see him getting released by this team when Colson Montgomery comes up. Then you put Chase Meidroff, one of the guys they picked up in the trade for Garrett Crochet, back to his more comfortable natural position at second base. And then you have Colson Montgomery, man, shortstop, like probably June, I'm thinking.
Let's talk about the rest of the AL Central. It basically, well, leaving the White Sox out of it, the rest of the 4 teams, it's pretty much wide open. Cleveland, Detroit, their great run they had to get into the wild card last year. Minnesota, ran out of games. Kansas City looks like they're up and coming as well. Who do you think has the edge in that division right now?
I always default to the Cleveland Guardians, because no matter what they do, as far as players leaving, as far as Tito Francona leaving last year, they always are competitive, and the style of baseball they play is conducive to winning. And they have one of the best players in the league and one of the best players in the division in Jose Ramirez. Like, he crushes the ball, no matter if it's for the White Sox or any team in that division. And yes, they did trade away Josh Naylor. Thank God is a White Sox fan, because he specifically killed the White Sox. but they traded him away. But I don't think it'll fall off any much because they got another White Sox killer in Carlos Santana coming back to the Cleveland Guardians / Indians. And so there's not going to be any problems. Bieber should be back eventually. Bybee just signed a long-term extension. They have the starting rotation to get the job done. And of course, they got one of the best closers in the game in Emmanuel Clase. As far as the rest, I think the Kansas City Royals are the second best team in this league, and they're buoyed by the best player in the AL Central, and Bobby Witt Jr. That guy is just a superstar right now, and he's, I think, only 23 years old. So the future is very bright for Bobby Witt Jr., and the present is bright as hell too. So they have him. They have, of course, Salvador Perez, brought back their pitchers, and Waka and Lugo. And while they did trade away Brady Singer, I think they're going to like the addition of Jonathan India into their infield. So I think the Kansas City Royals are still a team to be reckoned with. The Tigers, I think that late surge, I don't know if that's real. I would love to see it. They got back Jack Flaherty, which is coincidental because once they traded Jack Flaherty to the Dodgers last year, they started taking off, and so did his career. He won a World Series with them. Then they re-signed him, and now he's a Tiger. I think he's going to be pitching very well for them. Can they reproduce what they did last year? I know they have one of the top prospects in Jackson Jobe that might be playing a significant role in what they're going to be doing this year. I look for the Tigers to be competitive too. And the Twins, they have the White Sox disease. If Royce Lewis ever can stay healthy, the same thing if Byron Buxton can ever stay healthy, they would do some things. They would damage the AL Central. But we know those things never happen. Royce Lewis already got hurt in spring training. We know Byron Buxton's injury is just down the road. So if those guys give you 150 games, the Twins are deadly because they can hit. Same thing with Carlos Correa. But otherwise, they're going to be hurt like the White Sox. You never pencil down the Twins to get 150 games from those two players because that's what they are. They're oft injured, and they're going to be the fourth place team in this division. The only reason they're not in the cellar is because the White Sox are so woefully bad.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What about the rest of the American League, Herb? I know the New York Yankees, who reloaded, and Houston struggled last year, but saw him until play. Y'all is looking to have a bounce back this year, and let's not forget about the Baltimore Orioles either. Is it the New York Yankees or one of those other teams I mentioned that could give the Yankees a run for their money to represent the American League and World Series?
I'm bullish on the Boston Red Sox and what they've done. Of course, getting Garrett Crochet at the top of the rotation will help them immensely. They have a solid lineup. I mean, Rafael Devers is the truth. I think they just called up one of their big-time prospects in Christian Campbell. They still have Marcelo Mayer, and I think Roman Anthony as one of the top players in the minors, still available to come up eventually. Watch out for the Boston Red Sox. And yes, Alex Bregman did oversign, and get paid way too much. $40 million for Alex Bregman at this point in his career, probably too much. But in that ballpark, he's going to make that deal seem like a bargain because his swing is so suited for that Boston Red Sox stadium in Fenway Park and the Green Monster out there. So they're going to have some things going for them, and they're going to, if they can sort out where Bregman's going to play, if Devers can be fine with not playing third base, smooth. But I think, I think Lucas Giolito will eventually be back in that rotation. Brian Bayo, they have the rotation to get some outs. And then our guy, I hope eventually you will see Hendricks in the bullpen, who signed a 2-year deal with them a couple of years ago, because I'll always be a Liam Hendricks fan, and I'll always root for him because his advocacy off the field and what he does on the field. So I am a big-time Boston Red Sox fan this year. That's very hard for me to say because I don't like Boston. I don't like the Red Sox usually, but they have so many former White Sox, and they have so many players and so many people that are really good on that team. Yeah, the Yankees are the prohibitive favorite, but losing Garrett Cole will be a huge hindrance to them at the top of the rotation. And they haven't traded for anybody. The word on the street, they're trying to trade for Dylan Cease, but the Padres are balking at the price and what's going on right now. So until they trade for a guy like Dylan Cease, I still see them as second or third in that league. And I think Baltimore has squandered their chance to be a top of the league team in the AL because of prospect hugging. Yeah, Jackson Holliday will come up this year and be more steady and play well. And Gunnar Henderson is top-notch player, one of the best, and will probably battle for the MVP this year. But you saw the struggles last year by Adley Rutschman in the second half. That catching position is no joke. It wears down on you. Like wearing the tools of ignorance after a while wear down on you. And is he that same guy? I don't know. Lost a big bat in Anthony Santander also in the offseason. Are you going to be able to reproduce the power that he had there? I don't know. They got Tyler O'Neill from the Boston Red Sox. He's not the same player as Santander, and he's often hurt himself. So I think those teams in the AL East will be the cream of the crop. And the Rays, they're nomads this year, playing in the Yankees minor league stadium. I don't know if that will be a hindrance to them. And the Toronto Blue Jays did improve a little bit, and it is Vladdy Guerrero's walk year. So you expect a big year from him, and they did do some offseason signings, but I think that division is just way too hard for the Toronto Blue Jays to actually be an AL Central powerhouse. But I'm not looking at any teams out the AL West. I don't think they have enough. And the Seattle Mariners could have done something, but they did zero things in the offseason. The Sacramento team sucks. The Angels suck. The Astros are pretty strong. And the Rangers won a championship a couple years ago, but I don't think there's anything there. I think most of the concentration of where the AL representative in the World Series will come from the AL East.
Couple more moments with our buddy Herb Lawrence from Addison, the 35th podcast here on Second City Sports on Sports Chicago. LaKeena, McGee, Sidney Brown with you. Herb, we know you're an Illini grad. I know you were. I saw your tweets yesterday, and you were not surprising. I think we all can agree about them. The men losing to Kentucky yesterday in Milwaukee. The women, incidentally, they're down early against Texas, the number one seed in that Birmingham region. They're playing as we speak. Yeah, your therapy session is all yours, Herb. The Illini team, what do you think I do? The floor is yours.
I'm just disappointed in that team. You saw the game yesterday. It was just the team didn't come out to play in the first half. Saw a bunch of turnovers. KJ Kaspers Yakachonis had 8. I think him and fellow rookie Will Riley had 8 combined turnovers in that game. And you can't do that as ball handlers. It seemed like they're playing nonchalant, didn't have the urgency which the moment called for. It seemed like they're playing too cool for the moment, and that's mostly what KJ has done for this second half of the season. He played well in the first half, and especially in the non-conference. Once he got to the Big Ten, and then this game versus Kentucky kind of was laissez-faire and didn't really do what he needed to do there. There's only a couple of people who brought it, like Kylan Boswell brought it yesterday. Same thing with Ivisic. But way too many guys just slacking. And the fact that Brad Underwood continues to not be a good in-game coach is frustrating as a Illini fan, because what he's done for this program, I think all Illini fans will be grateful for him and to him forever because of what he's done, from where we weren't making the tournament under John Gross, and now each year we're just really good in the Big Ten and making the tournament. But also there comes a point where you want more. There's so many of those blowout games. And last year, the UConn game you could throw away, but that was a blowout. Like, you thought you were maybe at the same level as UConn, but you weren't. You got killed by them. This year, you got the same thing. You thought you were at the same level as Maryland. You got blown out by them twice. Like, are they that much better than you? No, they're not 20 points better than the Illini, but they did that twice. And the Duke game was a national embarrassment. And yeah, the score in the Kentucky game seemed close, but if you're watching that game, it wasn't close. They were getting outclassed by a team that, in my estimation, isn't that good. And so Brad did a good job for having all these players come into this team and only having one returning starter or one returning player from last year, and Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, who I think subsequently will transfer out because he didn't get played a lot by Brad this year. But there comes a time you got to ask for more. Like, this team should be consistently a Sweet 16 team. It should be top of the Big Ten instead of a 7th place team in the Big Ten. And if you can't do that, yeah, we're happy for what you've done for us, but we need to move on, especially since the Big Ten just got 3 good coaches in the system, especially with Iowa getting McCollum out there. Like, they've improved vastly. Instead of having Yelly, Fran McCaffrey, they got an actual tactician, an actual coach out there that's won Division II championships and took Drake pretty far this year. And so I am very disappointed with the effort and what the results were for this Illini team. And Brad, for me, I don't want him fired, but I want him put on notice and saying this type of losing and how we're losing is not acceptable at Illinois.
All right. Before we let you go, Herb, of course, the season opener for the White Sox is this Thursday against the Angels. Yours truly is going to be out there. I'll be hanging out in Lot B, thanks to the Chicago Sports Bumps in the Section 108. I don't know if you're going to be out there or not, but regardless, I keep telling LaKeena for the last 2 years to come out to at least one tailgate. You're going to meet everybody that's listening to our show. You're going to meet everybody that's world famous for White Sox Twitter, including yourself. Please, LaKeena hasn't listened to me for the last couple of years. Maybe you could convince her to come out to at least one tailgate this year. The floor is yours. Convince LaKeena she needs to come out this year to Lot B and have fun with us at the Sox tailgate.
Yeah, I'm not actually going to the game, the actual game, but I'm going to go to the Lot B's Whiskey at Comiskey because it's such a fun time. The folks at Chicago Sports Bums with HBIC, Baloney, my guy Dougie Fresh, and Johnny, they do a great job out there. They're going to have some food out there. It's free food, free drinks. They do some good tequila tasting, some good bourbon, some good whiskey tasting. All that stuff is going to be in there and free. And as you said, every person from White Sox Twitter will be out there having a convivial time, having a jovial time, because we know the season and when we go into that stadium, it's not going to be fun. So the fun we're going to have before the game is going to be what was going to be maintaining our fandom this year. So if you can't make it on opening day, they have a whole schedule of games. I think they have like 10 games they're going to be doing this year. And trust me, it is worth the time to go out there to Whiskey at Comiskey. They're great guys and they share the wealth of what they do. And they have a great podcast. If you guys are watching right here on Monday, they have podcasts, I think later on tonight at like 7 or 8 o'clock. So yeah, come on out. It's a great time because I'll be there on Thursday. I won't stay for the game because I hate opening day and I hate all the pomp and circumstance and how it brings out the big crowds and a lot of fights. Same thing with Cubs games. I'll be actually going to Saturday's game, the actual game, but I'll be attending that Whiskey at Comiskey. So LaKeena, come on through one of these days.
I will. I might. Look, I told Sid I might do that, especially if I'm around that area, because my brother doesn't live too far from the expressway, and I can just go right on by. So yeah, I might get out there when it gets warmer. I might. We'll see.
All right, that's been Herb Lawrence for the Ad-Sense 35th podcast co-host with Ryan Herrera on the Just Baseball podcast network. Herb, before we let you go, please tell the good folks out there where can they follow you on social media.
They can follow me at my last name spelled backwards. It's Ecknerwall 23. 23 is for Robin Ventura. And then if you're listening here or watching here, I do have that podcast, Addison 35th. We'll be doing AL Central preview. So I'll be talking to folks from the Tigers, folks from the Guardians, folks from the Twins and Royals this week. I'll be dropping 2 episodes tomorrow and 2 episodes on Wednesday. Just talking 30 minutes with these people to see how they feel about the White Sox and their own teams.
Cool.
All right, Herb. Thank you very much, as always, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Congrats on the new gig. Much continued success, and I'll definitely see you on Thursday, and I definitely will see you on Saturday. Keep up the great work, okay?
Thanks, Herb.
All right, thanks, Sid, LaKeena. Bye.
All right, stay safe.
All right, take care.
All right, that was our buddy Mr. Herb Lawrence from the Addison 35th podcast here on Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago. Of course, we'll do our potpourri segment coming up next. We'll talk some Bulls.
Where's the dust? I want the LeBron James dust. That's what I'm missing.
Well, you know what? We didn't get that dust yesterday, but I'm sure LeBron's gonna get his revenge later this week as the Bulls play the Lakers again. We'll talk about that, of course, the rest of the weekend in NBA. We'll talk a little bit of women's hoops as well as some sports media news. One of our friends has a new gig. We'll talk about that, and of course, a double dose of old school TV Monday, and a whole lot more. LaKeena McGee, Sidney Brown, Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago. Our sports potpourri, if you will, coming up right after this.
Oh.
Oh, goodness.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class.
These colored pencils, too. These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to Second City Sports. This Monday Extravaganza edition. You're locked and loaded and real live in 11 color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's LaKeena. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow McGee on the Twitter, X, and here's on the IG.
This is our last segment of the show for today in our sports potpourri segment, as LaKeena kindly calls it. We'll stick with that name forever, ever in a day. If you have any questions or comments for us during our last break of the show for today, you can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you.
All right. A scoring update on the women's tournament down in Austin. Number one, Texas in that Birmingham region. They now doubled up their lead on Illinois 32-16. So it looks like Illinois' season may be over on the women's side as well. But there's 2 minutes and 4 seconds left in the second quarter of that game, so we'll see if Atlanta can catch up, which I don't think they can. But they got the first win since 2018 against Creighton on Saturday, so you gotta give them credit for that. But yeah, too much Texas there looks like. But I digress. Now going into Saturday's game in the NBA, the Bulls 146, 150. 146-115 over the Lakers. 36 points for Kobe White, and Martellus Buzelis had one of his best games so far as a Bull. 31 points, including a monster dunk over Luka. And needless to say, Luka was not very happy after that. He had 34 points. Austin had 25 points to lose ever for the Lakers. Of course, LeBron, his first game back, had 17. But again, I preface that they play again on Thursday. And LeBron wants to put on a show and wants to get his revenge. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Sid, what do you think about that game on Saturday?
If you were a betting man, you took the Bulls to win that game. Congrats to you. I'll say that. The Bulls scored 81 second-half points to clinch the 31-point victory. Kobe White, as we mentioned on the show before, injuries have plagued him throughout the season, but almost over the last month, he's been playing great basketball, being the aggressor on offense. I think with the subtraction of Zach LaVine, you start to see him get some more shine. Josh Giddey, I think he was a rebound away from a quadruple-double. You're going to have to pay him a whole lot of money this summer, AK and Mark Evans. Are you ready to do that? Well, we'll see. But he had a good game also, too. Coming off the bench, Zach Collins, 9 points and 4 rebounds. Dalen Terry starting to get some more take, 13 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. Patrick Williams had a respectable stat line, 14 points, 3 rebounds. I know he's been disappointing this year. I know injuries has been a part of that as well. And also, too, Nikolai Vucevic, 12 points and 12 rebounds. So all around, a great performance by the Chicago Bulls. As we said before, if they shoot the ball very well, they'll win the majority of their games. They shot 58% overall, 46% from 3.
146, easily their season total so far for the Bulls. And they continue their West Coast trip. Of course, they face Denver tonight. So we'll see if they can replicate this against Jokic, Murray, and the rest of that group. Of course, they finish up their West Coast trip out there, and it's interesting. And no half throw or harm.
Denver's going to smack them back into reality tonight.
Well, you hope. We've seen, but I digress. Let's go do. We won't go game by game over the weekend, but we'll just do some of the big games over the weekend. Last night, OKC edged out the Clippers 103-101. SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 26 points. Kawhi Leonard 25 in a losing effort there, but look, I mean, it was kind of back and forth for a little bit. You thought that maybe the Clippers would catch up. I think the Clippers were up early, and they only scored 17 in the second quarter, so that kind of did them in. They did what they could, but they just couldn't, get the big shots late.
I think SGA is your number one candidate for MVP. There, I said it. And he's having a great year. No offense to Jokic, but as I said about Jokic, he's going to get the LeBron James, Steph Curry to a lesser extent, and the Michael Jordan treatment. You should be MVP every year, but everybody's not going to vote for you for MVP every year. So I think this year is going to be that year. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think he has an MVP trophy coming at the end of the year. You mentioned on the flip side for the Clippers, they've been playing very well ever since they took the shackles in terms of minutes restriction off of Kawhi Leonard. You see that team has been playing very well. Norman Powell, as we mentioned, who should have been an all-star early in the year, is having a great year. James Harden, the pressure is off of him, but he's going to be that facilitator now. So for the Clippers, they just got to stay out of 7th. As long as they stay out of 7th, I think they'll be fine. It's going to be a battle between them, the Warriors, and the Minnesota Timberwolves, who also been hot for the last few weeks.
Staying in the West, Denver beat Houston by 5. Jamal Murray had 39 points in that game. Boston, no trouble with Portland. Again, we'll just do the important games. Mm-hmm. Atlanta beat Philadelphia. Miami got a big win against Charlotte. Detroit and the Pelicans 136-130. If you took the over in that point total, I think you had a nice wrap up to your weekend there. Now going into Saturday's games, Atlanta beat Golden State, 25 points from Trae Young. Milwaukee beat Sacramento. Sacramento's going to be interesting to see if they can hang on to that play-in spot there. The Clippers, again, going into this Friday's games, the Clippers, they beat the Grizzlies by 20 points. Speaking of James Harden, he had 30 points in that game on Friday.
Yeah, so I mentioned James Harden doesn't have to carry the load anymore. Kawhi Leonard, the minute shackles are off of him. He's the number one option. James Harden could be the number two, sometimes the number three option for the Clippers. So as I said before, and I'll say it again, the Clippers going to have a battle between those two teams I mentioned with Minnesota and Golden State to stay out of that play-in tournament.
Going to be interesting next couple of weeks there. Portland upset Denver 128-109. Remember what I said? Portland is going to give some teams fits, so they won't get into the play-in obviously, but they're going to give some teams fits. So Josh Bills has done a great job there. Phoenix, they're starting to go on a little bit of a roll behind 42 from KD as the Suns beat the Cavs. They've lost three. They lost four in a row. I should say the Cavs have, so they're kind of falling back to earth a little bit. Boston, no trouble with Utah. Dallas, they're hanging in there, beating Detroit. OKC was pulling up 141 on the Hornets. Speaking of Minnesota, 20 points for Julius Randle as they beat the Pelicans. Houston edged out Miami, and Orlando beat Washington. Those are some of the games from this weekend in the NBA.
All right, we'll go to the schedule for the week ahead, starting with tonight's games. As LaKeena mentioned, the Bulls will take on the Nuggets. That's at 8 o'clock on NBA Elite Pass for the rest of your cars to the country. And if your antenna is not acting up like yours, my antenna did not act up yesterday as I watched the Blackouts. We'll get to them in a minute. You can see that game on CHSN starting at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. The rest of the NBA schedule for tonight looks like this. Minnesota visits Indiana to take on the Pacers. The Los Angeles Lakers will head back out on the road as they'll their first opponent on their East Coast road trip will be against the Orlando Magic. You can see that game on NBA TV starting at 6. The rest of the schedule as follows. Toronto will visit Washington. Dallas will visit Brooklyn. Philadelphia and the Pelicans, two bad teams. Ugh. Milwaukee will face Phoenix on the West Coast. That's the second game in the NBA TV Monday night doubleheader. That's at 9 o'clock. And the Celtics will stay out on the road on the West Coast. They'll face the Sacramento Kings.
Tuesday, tomorrow, you got Orlando and Charlotte at 6. Yeah, San Antonio and Detroit at 6 o'clock. Also at 6. The
20th anniversary of the rematch of the NBA Finals.
Yes. Well, brother. Oh, it's already been 20 years. My goodness. Golden State and Miami. That's the first game, the Tuesday doubleheader on TNT and streaming on Max. Dallas and the Knicks. I mean, that would have been a nice game about a month ago.
Right.
Atlanta and Houston. Memphis and Utah. Cleveland continues their West Coast trip as they face very feisty Portland squad. And the second game, the TNT True TV Max doubleheader, you got OKC and Sacramento. That should be an intriguing one.
All right, your schedule for Wednesday looks like this. Washington will face Philadelphia. Toronto will visit Brooklyn and take on the Nets. The first game in the Wednesday night ESPN doubleheader will feature LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers against Trey Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers. The Clippers will face the Knicks at MSG. That should be a sneaky good one. The Bucks and the Denver Nuggets will do battle. Could it be a preview for NBA Finals? Maybe. Me personally, I don't think so. But it'll be Giannis versus Jokic. That'll be at 8 o'clock on Wednesday. In the second half of the ESPN Wednesday night doubleheader will feature the Boston Celtics against the Phoenix Suns. Jason Tatum versus Kevin Durant.
Thursday, San Antonio and Cleveland. The NBA TV game, of course, there's no TNT game. Of course, they've got the men's Sweet 16 going on there. Dallas and Orlando, that's going to be the lone game on NBA TV nationally. Indiana and Washington, Atlanta and Miami. The Lakers, or as I like to call the LeBron's revenge game as they face the Bulls to their East Coast trip. Memphis and OKC, that should be a sneaky good one there. Houston and Utah, and Portland and Sacramento at 9. And that's your schedule for this week in the NBA.
You forgot that Spurs Cavaliers game. It's the rematch of the 07 NBA Finals.
You're getting rematches all over the place.
You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid LaKeena here with you. Let's pull the switch a little bit and let's do some sports media news. You have some juicy nuggets for us. Tell us about it.
Well, a friend of our show, of course, you guys listened to him early on 670 The Score. Our buddy Marshall Harris has been hired over at ABC7 Chicago. Made his debut over the weekend. He'll be like a utility Yeah, right. Deservedly so. He's gonna be kind of like a utility guy, if you will. He'll pitch in whenever Ryan Cheverini, one of our friends of the show, Miss Dion Miller, and another friend of the show, Mr. Marcinowski, when they're off, doing assignments and whatnot, he'll be kind of like the pinch hitter there from time to time. So we saw him all throughout the weekend. So congrats to our buddy Marshall Harris, the newest member over at ABC 7 Chicago sports team. Yay!
Yeah, he filled in late last week doing one of the weeknight shows, and he posted it up on his social media pages. I sent him congratulations there, and now he's going to be part of that rotation on the number one rated TV station in Chicago. So congratulations to him as well. I know him and Layla Rahib are carrying on the midday show on the radio on 670 The Score. So it's nice to see him back on TV.
Yeah, speaking of the score, of course, still fallout from what happened on Friday with Dan Bernstein. Although I know our buddy Jeff Eggers from the Sun Times, he has his eyes and ears glued to find out what's going to happen. I know some people have been lobbying for us, maybe our girl Layla Rahim, another friend of the show, and of course one of our good buddies, Mr. Lawrence Holmes. Maybe have those two do a show together. Maybe put Marshall with Speaks. I don't know if that's gonna work, but I digress. We know we've been lobbying for our buddy Mark Roy to get a shot at one of those slots because he's more than earned the opportunity. So it'll be interesting to see what happens down the line there over at The Score.
Yeah, I know some folks had talked about Jason Golf doesn't open the negotiations for Jason Golf. Of course, the host of the Full Goal podcast on the Spotify and the Ringer. Of course, he's the Bulls pre and post game host on CHSN. Do I see that happening? No. Does he deserve a shot? Yes. Do I see that happening with Jason Golf? No. Doesn't mean I don't want to see it personally, but I don't think that's going to happen. You mentioned about some of the other candidates with Lawrence Holmes possibly going back to middays with Marshall Harris. I would love to see it, but I don't think that's going to happen. Mark Grody, he more than deserves it. He's been, of course, obviously friend of the show, but he's been the utility guy along with being the Bears reporter for so many years. He's just worked his butt off in this business. Of course, Layla Rahimi, as you mentioned on our show on Friday when you broke the news about Dan Bernstein, there's no full-time female host on a sports talk show on ESPN 1000 nor 670. So if those other options are not suitable for mention, the higher ups, Layla Rahimi more than deserved that job because remember she co-hosted with Bernstein when she got let go by ABC Sports Chicago. She did a great enough job that Mitch Rose has decided to keep her as a utility guy person at the station. And of course, she's been the third wheel of that show over the last couple of years. So if those other options are not feasible by the higher ups, Layla Rahimi more than deserves to keep that co-hosting job with Marshall Harris.
And I'm sure they're going to want to fill that slot up as soon as possible, of course, with baseball season, especially Cubs season starting. You got the NFL draft coming up. So I'm sure they're going to want to set it up, down the line before that NFL draft coming up next month. So we'll see what happens.
Yep. Any other sports media news from over the weekend? Because I saw something. I think I saw something somewhere that CBS ratings have been very good, at least in the first 2 or 3 days of the NCAA tournament. Has it been the greatest? No, but I don't think it's been that terrible either. We've seen some upsets, but you still have Duke, you still have Kentucky now in the round of 16. You have John Calipari. He's not coaching the quote-unquote big blood schools anymore. You still have his name as his team. The Arkansas Razorbacks are in the Sweet 16. Mm-hmm. I know Rick Pitino's gone, but you still have Tom Izzo in there too with his Michigan State squad, also advancing to around the 16. But you still have some big-name coaches and big-name programs as well, keeping casual fans preoccupied.
Yeah, I think some people thought that maybe, we didn't see that Cinderella McGee's. But Purdue kind of sent them packing. You got a couple of 60s, but they're all from big conferences. BYU's from the Big 12, of course. Ole Miss is from the SEC. I think more than half the teams left are from the SEC. So we got a little bit of West Coast representation from Arizona too. So I think that so far, we've had some great performances. The tournament's been really solid. Chalky, for the most part, but again, I think that's what you want, right? We saw what happened with all those upsets. Mm-hmm. People weren't interested, so you can't have it both ways. Like you'll be pissed that you're not seeing you're seeing the same old schools, mm-hmm. but you don't want to tune in when you get those McGee's and your Norfolk Stakes and your FAU made it all the way to the Final Four a couple of years ago. You can't have it both ways, folks. You just can't.
Yeah, so it's a ratings, especially now with the option of streaming. It's a tricky thing, but the NCAA tournament ratings have done well for CBS and Turner. Speaking of ratings, LaKeena, the NBA, I know that our good folks at Alpha Announced put up this article, I believe, last week, but since Luka Doncic was traded from the Dallas Mavericks to the Los Angeles Lakers last month, NBA ratings all of a sudden have skyrocketed. Of course, Jimmy Butler being traded from Miami to Golden State has helped that the Warriors not only win on the court, but ratings have gone on their local broadcast as well.
Oh, so you're saying that the NBA ratings crisis was greatly exaggerated? No, really? So yeah, when I saw those ratings, I'm like, oh, okay. So I thought no one was watching the NBA, so whatever. But yeah, I mean, look, I think that Doncic trade, I think definitely gave the jolt that the NBA needed, and of course the Butler trade too. So I think shaking it up a little bit, I think definitely helps. Has helped the NBA a lot. And I think those ratings are going to go up as we get into the playoffs. So yeah, all those articles and all those hot takes, they all look really silly now. Which for me, I that's always a good thing from my perspective. So
I couldn't agree. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Before we move on here with our double play of Old School TV Monday, since we're almost up against it. Um, Last Tuesdays, we didn't talk about it much on our show on Friday, but I want to discuss it with you here. The broadcast for the national games for Fox with the Dodgers and the Cubs from Tokyo, Japan. Of course, both those broadcasts from Fox were from via Los Angeles via remote. But I had a problem with this. I definitely want to get your take since you're the Cubs fan on this program. Obviously, I'm not. But the marquee TV crew was over there with Alex Coleman filling in for John Shambi, Jim DeShays, and Taylor McGregor. They were over in Japan, but the radio guys, Brian Coomer and Pat Hughes, Hall of Famer, they were back in Chicago broadcasting the games at Wrigley Field. I had a big problem with this. On the flip side for the Dodgers, both their television and radio crews were in Japan, but for the Cubs, you had your TV crew over there, but your radio crew back here in Chicago doing the games remotely from Wrigley Field. I had a big problem with this. I don't know about you, but I had a big problem with it.
Well, welcome to, if you remember those soccer games from overseas. If you when ESPN had them, a lot of their guys were in New York and in Bristol, broadcast those games remotely. So I'm not surprised. I know that Audacity wasn't going to pay for Hughes and Coomer and there were people to get that the trip over there to Japan. So I'm not that surprised by it. But that's what happens when you go into these type of games overseas, because you might have some instances where you may not be able to go over there and you have to kind of make it sound like you're there when you're not. So again, unless you tell somebody, you don't know. So yeah, it is very it kind of sounded like they were they were from a studio here in the States, but what can you do?
Yeah. Anything else before we close out with Old School TV Monday?
I mean, shout out to the Blackhawks. They scored 7 goals.
Yay!
That's the 21st game of the season. So, I mean, at this point, I think if you're a Hawks fan, you want to just see what you can do. You'll probably be very likely for a new coach. Look, Bertuzzi had a goal. Donato had a goal. Bedard had a goal and an assist. So that was a nice all-around team win there. But yeah, I think for the Blackhawks, you want to at least get to the end of the season, see what you can do, to find, coaching wise, or who can you get to perhaps play with Bedard. Because, again, I think that's what you want if you're a Blackhawks fan. But yeah, you kind of have to get to the next step here.
Yeah, and we'll see what GM Kyle Davidson has up his sleeves this summer as they try to get the Hawks to be a competitive team going into next year and forward. All right, LaKeena, it's time for our double play on the special edition of Old School TV Monday. As I told you, it will evolve around the world of sports. And since opening day will happen on Thursday around Major League Baseball, my first entry into Old School TV Monday this week. Well, of course, this is the White Sox 125th anniversary of their franchise, the 20th year of the 05 World Series. We'll leave the 05 World Series team alone for this edition. We'll bring some old moments and memories from that team as the season goes along. But I want to pay tribute to that 1990 team. And of course, this was the last year, 35 years ago this season. This was the last year of their last year playing in that old Comiskey Park. And of course, they had a throwback game on Wednesday, July 11th of 1990. They faced the Milwaukee Brewers at old Comiskey Park. The Brewers would beat the White Sox on that day 12-9. And here's some of the players that played in that game. Greg Vaughn from Milwaukee, Dan Plesac, now analyst on MLB Network, Gary Sheffield, who should be in the Hall of Fame. And let's see here when my computer works. Dave Parker, who's now going to be in the Hall of Fame for this year. So big man Dave Parker, BJ Surhoff, and Robin Yao, who batted third.
Yes, this was back when the Brewers were in the AL still, and
that's right.
That's kind of how all that transpired. But that 1990 White Sox squad, I mean, you had Blackjack, he was starting to kind of get his groove at that time. Bobby Thigpen, Eric
57
King,
saves that year.
Yeah. Eric King, Alex Fernandez, he was kind of an up and comer there for that year's squad, and of course Carlton Fisk. I don't want to say reliable, but Ozzie Guillen was great. Craig Grayback, Frank Thomas, Robin Ventura. I mean, those are kind of like sort of a beginning of that that team that led to the 90s White Sox winning consistently. And look, I still say they could have went to the ALCS, but I think they would have lost to the Blue Jays in '94. But I guess another discussion for another time. But I think this 1990 squad, I think, was really solid. It kind of like was sort of on the, not on the cusp, but sort of like, this was kind of like a sign of what things, to come.
Yeah, and speaking of Frank Thomas, he will make his debut a month later in Milwaukee. Of course, he had his first home run in Minnesota in August of 1990. For this game against Milwaukee, this throwback game on July 4th, 1990. It was a throwback to baseball in 1917. The great Gene Honda, who still does PA Hawks and the White Sox now, he announced the starting lineups in the old styrofoam style, and the popcorn and the hot dogs were cheap back then, and the White Sox wore their 1917 throwback uniforms. You can find this game on YouTube under the this is where you find baseball channel on YouTube. So check that out when you can. This is where you find baseball YouTube channel, and type in the Brewers at the White Sox on July 11th, 1990. So that's our first entry into Old School TV Monday. Our second Old School TV Monday entry for this week. LaKeena, 30 years ago tonight, it was Friday, March 24th, 1995. Unfortunately, I was still stuck in the Cook County Hospital recovering from walking pneumonia. Michael Jordan came back to the game of basketball. In his home return to the new United Center, they faced the Orlando Magic. Now, they ended up losing that game. Of course, these two teams would meet in less than 2 months in the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs, of course, where the Orlando Magic won. But check out who was on that 1995 team. B.J. Armstrong, Corey Blunt, Judd Buechler, JoJo English, Ron Harper. That was his first year with the club. People forget that. Of course, you have Michael Jordan, who was still wearing number 45 at the time. Steve Kerr, Larry Kerstowiak, who was the last guy off the bench on that team that year. I know. A second-year player named Tony Kukoc. Luke Longley, his first full season here. Remember, he was traded the year before at the deadline for Stacey King. Of course, Will Perdue, who's the starting center that year in his last year in the Bulls uniform. Of course, Scottie Pippen, who people thought he was going to get traded to Phoenix that year. Obviously, that didn't happen. Of course, Dickie Simpkins, his rookie year, and his second year in the Bulls uniform. Now, Bulls broadcaster Bill Winnington.
Simpkins does a great job over at Fox doing their Big East games. But yeah, check out who was on the 95 Orlando squad. You got, of course, Shaq, Penny Hardaway, Nick Anderson, Dennis Scott. So, among some of the other players from that year. And look, I think those early 90s Magic squad, I think, lost a shot, especially when MJ, however you want to call it, hiatus, if you will, from basketball. I think they had their shot, perhaps maybe winning the title. They couldn't do it, so they lost their chances there. But that game, I think really kind of, it was sort of like, Jordan just finding his momentum and his groove. So it was definitely one of those things that kind of like turned the corner for him. But I remember that game very well.
Yeah, the Bulls were down up 5 with I think 5 minutes to go, and the Orlando Magic made a run to win that game, spoiling Jordan's home debut at the United. So you can catch that game on the Entertainment Goes Pop YouTube channel. It's the Magic at the Bulls on March 24th, 1995. So catch that game there on that YouTube channel. LaKeena, real quick about the Orlando Magic squad. Don't forget Jeff Turner. I think he still does TV for the Orlando Magic. Remember, he was that backup power forward and center to Shaq and Horace Gray. And Wayne Tree Rollins, who's dipping back and forth between assistant coach and last guy off the bench, backing up Shaquille O'Neal.
Doing his
best.
Love
it, Wayne Tree Rollins.
Oh God, doing his best Bill Russell impersonation. Coach being the coach and playing, but I digress. That's how things were back then in those days. So yeah, so what a time that was in the NBA there. And before we forget, of course, we want to send our thoughts and prayers to Mr. George Foreman, who passed away over the weekend at age 76. Of course, he won the gold medal back, in 1968 down in Mexico City. Of course, one of his famous fights was against Muhammad Ali. Unfortunately, he lost that fight in 74, but he did hold other titles. And of course, at age 50, beat Michael Moore in 94, kind of picking up with the here too. He held that welterweight title for about 5 years before, of course, he lost that to force he relinquished that title too. And of course, we got to do this show, I guess, at some point for Old School TV Monday. He actually also had a sitcom called George. If you remember, back in the early 90s, right around that time. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long, but it was kind of a blah. But it was nice to see him get a foray into television sitcom. But of course, became a cult figure for the George Foreman Lean Me Fat Reducing Grilling Machine.
Yeah, those were very affordable back then. They were very damn good too. My late mother bought one, so they were very good at the time. So like you said, that they gave him a second life after boxing. So and that definitely became a pop culture phenomenon. I remember those Beanie Babies too. I know we got to get up out of here, but those along with those Beanie Babies and the expansion of video game systems and all that. Yeah, those George Foreman grills, you couldn't go wrong with it at that time.
Well, as the saying goes, I guess you can say that that walks so that your air fryers nowadays could run.
Exactly.
So,
yep.
So
yeah.
So it kind of worked in a lot of ways. But George Foreman died at the age of 76, one of the all-time great boxers, and of course became a cult figure.
Yeah. So peace and love to his family during this challenging time. Okay, real quick. This Thursday at 12:10 p.m. Central Standard Time, for those of you in the Chicagoland area, the Chicago White Sox will kick off the 2025 season, celebrating the 125th anniversary of the ball club and, of course, the 20th anniversary of the 05 World Series team. The White Sox will open up against the Anaheim Angels. Lot B, this is where it's at this Thursday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Come on now. Everybody from White Sox Story is going to be there. Yours truly is going to be there with the Lot B tailgate presented by the Chicago Sports Bumps and the guys and gals at Section 108. Come one, come all. We may have a celebrity or two there. Who is it? Get your butt down there this Thursday at 12 noon for the season opener of the Chicago Sports Bumps / Section 108 tailgate. Yours truly is going to be there. All White Sox fans are welcome. Come one, come all. We're definitely going to have a great time. It might not be a great time watching the crap on the field, but we throw down some great tailgates. So LaKeena says she's going to get out there for one of those tailgates this year. We'll see about that. But this Thursday for opening day at 12 noon Chicago time at Sox Park on the south side. Lot B, come one, come all.
And of course, the Cubs will will resume their season, as I say, after losing those 2 games out in the Tokyo series against the Dodgers. They stay out west. They face Arizona at 9-10. So it'll be Justin Steele versus Zach Gallen. That should be a fun matchup there between those 2 squads. And of course, Detroit, the Dodgers will resume their series as well as they host Detroit. That's at 6 o'clock on ESPN and streaming on ESPN Plus.
All right, and we'll have the coverage of opening day on our next episode coming up this Friday, starting at 12:15 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. All right, LaKeena, take us home.
You can find McGee on the Twitter, X, and IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sidney Brown, on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. Be sure to download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. Please subscribe to our podcast. We are located at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're ready, please give War Media a follow on all social media platforms. Excuse me. Thank you very much in advance your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
City Sports Live in the living color every Monday. Yeah. Be sure to catch Second City Sports Live in the living color every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2:15 Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as the kids would say. Be sure to catch Second City Sports Live in the living color every Monday, every Friday from 12:15 to 2:15 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
And of course, we want to thank our buddy Herb Lawrence from the Addison and 30 to 35th podcast for joining us today. Of course, always great, talking with him. Of course, you can catch their podcast anywhere where you get your podcast, right there on YouTube. So, we'll definitely be listening to his episodes coming up.
Yes, we always love him joining us right here on the program, dropping that knowledge on the Finding Illini and the Chicago White Sox and the rest of Major League Baseball.
And of course, you can catch Second City Sports and all other great content on the replay right there on Sports on Chicago's Facebook and YouTube channel. Again, you can catch our content, our show, Sean and Maya, the Smoke Fellas, What's Up Cuz, a whole lot more other great content. Catch it anytime, anywhere. The replays on the Sports on Chicago's Facebook and YouTube channels.
And we will provide.
All right, folks, enjoy all the basketball, all the baseball that's coming up on Thursday, and so much more. We'll keep you guys updated on any other NFL news that comes down the pike within this week. So for Sid, I'm LaKeena. This has been Second City Sports on Sports on Chicago. We'll see you guys on Friday.
Let's go, White Sox. Holla!